Hi, welcome back to another review. Today my review is on the Bloodsinger series by Kat Adams. Now Kat Adams, it's two authors, and when you kind of combine their names it forms Kat Adams, but it's two friends anyway. And so there's 3 books so far: Blood Song, Siren Song and Demon Song. The 4th book is called The Isis Collar and it's out in March 2012. Okay, so the plot of these books, it's about Celia Graves, and she's a bodyguard. But in this kind of novel world, there are lots of different supernatural creatures, and everyone's kind of aware of them really. And there's vampires, which they call bats in this. There's werewolves, there's sirens, there's mages, telepaths, clairvoyants, demons, ghosts, everything really. And Celia's just normal, she's no superpowers or whatever, and she is, at the beginning she's doing some bodyguard job, and she gets attacked by some vampires, and she gets turned into kind of not a full vampire but kind of like a half vampire, so she can still go out in the day if she puts on lots of like sun factor, and she craves blood but she doesn't have to drink it. And holy water and crosses, they don't affect her, but she does have fangs, and they're not retractable, which is different, because usually when you read about vampires they can always retract their fangs. She can't, and she's really pale too. So then throughout the books we see how she adapts to this and how other people treat her, and then how other kind of creatures then come into the story as well throughout those 3 books. And I have to say, a lot happens in these books. Now, I read a few reviews, and a lot of people can't stick with this series because just too much happens. I have to say, if you're going to read this series, please read the whole 3 books, because you will just be angry and frustrated if you stop at 1 or 2, because it does take the whole 3 books for the majority of the plot lines to be solved. Like, the authors, they really planned ahead. Like, I feel like the authors are really intelligent. Like, they plan ahead a lot, and sometimes they might start some kind of subplot in the first book and it mightn't get resolved. It mightn't even be mentioned again until the 3rd book. And then when you read about it, you're like, oh, right. So you kind of have those kind of epiphany moments about the reason behind the story much later on. And I know, like, it's kind of like a delayed satisfaction almost, and a lot of people are going to hate that. Like, when I was reading it at the beginning, I was really into it. I loved it, actually. I thought it was really good and exciting, and I was able to keep up mostly with all the different elements. But then when I finished it, I was like, what? That's it? We didn't really find out much answers. So I had to read the next one, and then the authors even start new storylines in the 2nd book. You think they started enough in the first one, but no, they start a few more in the 2nd. And in the 3rd, a lot of them are resolved, and there's a couple still more to be kind of resolved, but the majority of them are. And so I do think if you start reading this series, please read all 3, because you will be satisfied by the time you get to the end of the 3rd. So yes, a lot does happen, and I think as well a little bit editing wouldn't have gone amiss. Like, there's some elements of the stories that are barely even mentioned, and kind of like a whole subplot is started up for this certain element, and it's not mentioned again for ages later, and I feel like the author shouldn't have putting it in there at all. Like, it wasn't worth it. So yeah, I do think a bit of editing could have put in. There's a lot of characters, like, because of all this stuff going on, there are a lot of characters, and Celia, our protagonist, she does meet a lot of new people too, so at the beginning it was hard as well to keep up with who's who. I remember I was reading it and she mentioned something about Bob, and I had to stare at the name for a good like 7 seconds, willing myself to remember who Bob was, and then it clicked to me who he was. So that kind of happened now and then, like, there's so many characters, but they are like really like diverse, and there's all different kind of people. And so I did say the authors seem kind of intelligent, and these books, I say, were kind of hard to write because there's so much involved. They don't have to explain every little thing really explicitly, which is kind of good in a way. Like, some things are a bit implicit, and it's nice. That's nice for a change, I feel. but sometimes there were a bit of plot holes here and there, just little things. And sometimes I kind of wanted them to explain things a little bit more. Like they kept referencing to Celia's childhood, and I really wanted a full description about what happened in her childhood. We know it's traumatic, but I want to know what exactly happened. Maybe we will in a future book. Or else maybe the authors feel like you don't have to know, you just have to know it was traumatic, and they don't feel like they need to give you the details. And I suppose that's kind of okay too. At the beginning I didn't think there was going to be a love interest, because it took a long time for a love interest to kind of be introduced, and I was thinking, maybe this is like really for a change. There's not going to be a love interest, it's just going to be with Celia and her friends and her job and all the trouble brought to her door. So I was like, that's different, because usually there's always love interest, and that's why I was expecting it. And there kind of was towards the end, I suppose, but do not read this series if you're into that kind of fantasy romance, those types of books, because I swear the romance in this book is minuscule compared to everything else. I mean, I read a review and someone said in a YA novel by now, I mean, the person would be married with kids because Celia moves at such a slow pace. So don't be expecting some big huge romance in this series, because there's not. And so I do recommend this series. I do think it's a bit different because it moves at a really fast pace, a lot happens, and you really have to pay attention. But I suppose it's not an easy read. You do have to put a bit of thought into it when you're reading it. But I kind of like that as well. So I enjoyed it, and there's lots of twists and turns and reveals, and I really liked it. And I liked the main character too. I felt really sorry for her, cause she's a daft being a vampire, and every person on the street was treating her. You feel really bad for her. So yeah, I do like this series, and I think you should give it a go. And I'm looking forward to the fourth one. So I do suggest you should, check them out. Okay, so then I'm going to move on to a spoiler review. I have a feeling the spoiler review is going to be quite long because there's so much to discuss. So if you're not in the mood to watch something that's a bit long, don't bother watching it. But if you want to just listen to all the my opinion on all the little plot points, stay tuned. Okay, so what will I talk about first? I suppose the love interest. So as I said, there's not a big love interest in this series. When we first met Kevin, I instantly liked him. Sometimes I have that kind of instinctual, I really love this character, and I did like Kevin. I liked that he started out as her friend for years. He was kind of like this protective friend, and he was a werewolf. And I thought he was going to be a love interest, like a friend who really liked her for years, and she didn't really think about it much, and then they'd get close. But I was bitterly disappointed with how the authors treated the Kevin storyline, because he was in it at the beginning, a little bit in the middle, and that was about it. And he wasn't really in the second book much till the end. Yeah, I thought it was weird how the author treated the whole Kevin storyline. I had big expectations for that and had a lot of potential. The authors just went to go a different way, and he didn't even end up as a love interest. And when he wrote the note to Cecilia at the end of the first book saying, "I'll be back for you," I was like, oh, that sounded really sweet. And Jones, he mentioned when Celia was in a dream that, or was it Jones? Someone anyway, that they'll make a deal with Kevin if he comes back to this job, and they'll all leave Celia alone. And she was like, why would that be a deal breaker for him? And they were like, yeah, I'm not going to tell you. I thought what they were going to tell her was he was in love with her, but then we see that she, when she's on the Siren Island, and one of the sirens mentioned her clairvoyant died, she has a new one, and we don't even know where her warrior person, the werewolf, is. So I think he was kind of like, what's the word? He was picked basically to be kind of like her Princess Siren warrior, and that was the reason he was going to be back for her, and that was the reason that her safety was important to him. So all my big kind of, ooh, maybe he's in love there was kind of cancelled out. And I was really disappointed as well that he didn't acknowledge how hurtful he was to her at the end of the second book. You know, when he drugged her, kidnapped her, you know, served her up to get his sister back, and she almost died, like. And he didn't apologise, he didn't acknowledge it. He goes, I'll thank you, but I won't say sorry. I think it was a compliment what I did, because I trusted your abilities. And I was like, oh no, their friendship's totally gone. I just felt bad for her, and I wished Kevin would have felt more remorse, because I liked their friendship, and I don't know what's going to happen in the next one. I hope he tries to make it up for her, and he does feel bad for what he did. I know Warren did a little bit. Kevin, geez, he didn't really care. So Kevin was out, and then Bruno. So she kept referring to this Bruno, her ex. I still didn't really know how they broke up. I want to know that. Like, at first I thought she left him, and then she said something later on, and it was more like he left her. So I'm not sure about that. In one review I read, someone described it being lazy of the authors to have the main love interest be an ex, because we didn't see how they met, how they developed, how they fell in love, how they broke up. We didn't get to read any of that, and I suppose it was lazy of the authors to do that. He finds out that some girl is pregnant, and he has to leave Celia and go be with her, which turns out to be like an evil Siren, Irene. And then she was kind of devastated, and she goes, okay, I don't want to be with Bruno now. And I kind of liked that. I wanted her to leave him as an ex. And I'm really liking John Creed now. I really hope she gives him a chance. He's really kind of sweet and funny, and they get along really well. And I really hope they kind of become the couple. And now Bruno, she's still giving Bruno a chance. Like, he's kissing her, John's kissing her, and she should tell Bruno, no, he had his chance. Now it's time for John Creed. So I hope in the next book, you know, it's not an equal love triangle. I hope John is more in the front, because Bruno doesn't really deserve her now. Well, the character, I was really baffled by. Remember when Celia first woke up after becoming a half vampire, and there was Emma, and there was another guy called John Jones, I think. And I thought he was going to play a role in the rest of the book. Like, they started off kind of hating each other, and I thought, oh, maybe they're going to develop to be the love interests. I don't know why I'm so focused on the love interest. But then he disappeared. He came in a dream for like 2 seconds at the end of the first book, and he didn't pop up till the third book. I was like, what was that about? So him and Kevin could have done a lot of editing. I think they could have almost been cut out. So yeah, so that's just one of the little negatives of that. Things take a long while to be resolved. I'm still not sure why she was attacked at the beginning, and you know, she turned to a vampire. Like, at first I thought it was because there was people, like Kevin, I can't remember the name of his position or job, wasn't he involved in some kind of supernatural assassin team, and he left, and they attacked Celia because they knew he was close to her, and they thought maybe he'd want to get revenge and go after some other assassin guy. That's what I thought after a while, but then the Prince of Rustland was brought into it, and I was like, maybe it's something to do with him. And then also there was Irene the Siren, and maybe she hired someone to attack Celia. So I'm still confused about the proper reasoning behind that attack. I hope the authors, you know, explain that in the fourth one. I don't know if we're meant to know it already, or if we still need to find out for certain. If anyone else out there definitely knows why, let me know. I started to get really sick of the whole mentally unstable friends. Like, I didn't mind Celia having some kind of mental health issues. That was, you know, a different side to her character, and it made you feel sympathy for her. I'm fine we had Violet, her friend, who lived in Birchwood, the mental health facility. But then other friends started to lose it. So then we had Emma, and then we had Donna. Oh my god, the third book was ridiculous, because there's like Celia, who isn't quite, you know, she's going through her own traumas, and then she had to deal with her two kind of hysterical friends, and I was like, oh, I just got really sick of that. Like, we had Violet, and then it was like, alright, we have the whole Dawn, and then we had Emma, and I was like, oh my god, this is too much. So I hope they have miraculous recoveries in the next book, because I'm getting sick of that. I think the author could have edited out her whole family drama as well. Speaking of the Sirens, I really like that element. I like that we found out she was part Siren. Maybe some people felt it was a bit too much, but you know, she's a princess, and I enjoyed reading when she was on the island and how she was treated. And who's the queen? Queen Lapoka or Lapaka or something. I like her, and I like her relationship with Celia too. So I think they're my main points I wanted to discuss. I think the demon is probably going to come into the next book too, and I'd love to see if he did manage to kidnap Celia and all the other guys, all the other people in her life, to, you know, had to come rescue her, or she had to get out of this situation herself. And I think that would be really interesting. I'm not sure what the next book is about. So yeah, as I said, I do recommend this series, and there's so much that happens in this. You have to have an opinion on something, so please let me know your opinions down below. And thank you very much for watching.